Welcome to the Suicide Monk Podcast, a platform dedicated to fostering open and honest conversations about the deeply sensitive and complex topic of suicide. Before we delve into the narratives and discussions presented here, it's important to emphasize that we are not medical professionals, therapists, or counselors. We do not possess the qualifications to offer clinical advice or treatment. Instead, the Suicide Monk Podcast serves as a safe space for individuals to share their personal stories and experiences, all while preserving their anonymity. We encourage our guests to tell their stories anonymously, recognizing that privacy and anonymity can be crucial for those who wish to share their experiences without fear of judgment or exposure. Our mission is to create a supportive community, raise awareness, and promote understanding, all while emphasizing that seeking professional help is crucial when dealing with mental health issues and suicidal thoughts. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please reach out to a mental health professional or contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 for immediate assistance. Together, the Suicide Monk Podcast aims to break the stigma surrounding mental health and let those who are struggling know they are not alone.
Welcome to the Suicide Monk Podcast, and I am your host, the voice behind the Suicide Monk. Suicide's a very difficult subject to talk about. It's very taboo, and a lot of people don't know what to do with the person that feels that way. And that's why I created this podcast, is to give you and myself a voice and maybe to relieve the pressure of something that haunts me and probably you every day. So let's get to it. Here's my buddy, and he'll introduce himself at the end. It's definitely worth the listen. This is a great conversation. He is an advocate for suicide under certain conditions, and he just recently experienced a friend who was around, I think, 25, that took his own life, and then met the family for the first time. And you'll hear his experience and how that affected him, and if it changed his opinion or not. So let's get to it. Well, let's kind of recap on your thoughts before we venture into your story of this last couple of weeks, of what you, or how you, what you think of suicide. It's a taboo subject, so it's hard. Even mentioning it, it's a hard thing to even just bring it up. It's like,
I think that it is a very taboo subject, and people are very upset by it. And I think that it's very difficult for people to have an objective viewpoint, because it's almost impossible to have, which I think is like kind of what happened to me recently, is that like I've objectively felt a certain way, and then then you have experiences that make you feel differently, like that makes you feel like you have personal experiences that change your philosophical position on what you believe. So like I think philosophically I think suicide is it's fair. It seems like a situation that you can think through, and it's like in a certain way, like it's just like exercising control and freedom.
Yeah, well,
in a way, like,
that's true.
And I think that it sits directly opposite to being alive, which is not something you had a choice in. Like, you're forced into it. Like, you're forced into it by either your parents or by some God, if that's what you believe in, or whatever. But like, you have no say whatsoever in being alive. Like, it just happens to you without any participation. Like, you're born, you didn't. No one like checks in, like, hey, do you want to be alive? Like, you're just like
that we know of. And we kind of had this discussion, and it's kind of the hypothetical. It's like standing on the diving board, and we swam the hardest to get to this spot. So, did we choose it or not? I mean, is there a before life? Is there an afterlife? Is there?
I mean, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
you're not. And that's like, it's like it's a fun argument to like, it's a fun like mental exercise than argument.
Oh, yeah,
like, but like to think about like, but you're never going to know. Like you can't possibly know. And that's like, so it's either like infinitely important or infinitely meaningless. There isn't really any middle ground there. But I guess my point is that if life is forced on you by something, by someone, but I don't think that it's not a choice that you or I consciously made. Maybe, I mean, I guess there's an argument in there somewhere that like some part of me that I am unable to interact with figured out how to be alive. But like, I didn't get like my day-to-day existence. I don't get to choose this. I just wake up in the morning and I have to like, stumble through the day, and which is some days really amazing. And then some days it's really, really horrible. And I think for a lot of people that those horrible days start to outweigh the nice ones. And I think that there is a case to argue that like a well thought out, well planned suicide is okay. It should be socially acceptable. It should be like, hey, like I'm not running away from things. I'm not like shirking responsibility. I'm not like trying to like fucking piss off my mom. It's just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm going to button up everything. I'm going to like do this in a way where I tidy it up and check out. And I think that is...
So it's not an emotional decision. It's a logical decision.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's emotional at some point, but like,
but
it's not like, I think that like a lot of people do it for the wrong reason. A lot of people do it because they like really want to hurt somebody's feelings.
Right.
Like, I've had a friend in high school while I was in college. I mean, she killed herself to piss off her parents, which is fucking brutal. Like, well, yeah. I mean, she did the whole thing was like, she did it to like piss off her family, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
I mean, even like staged it in a way so that like they'd have to find her.
That's terrible.
Be like, hey, like, actually, fuck you guys. Like, you treated me like shit. So I'm going to make you live with this for the rest of your lives. Like, that's brutal.
Oh, that's...
And like super selfish and not responsive. All bad things. But...
I mean, it's vindictive at its core.
Right. And I don't think that like... But even in that, like, that was still her decision. And I still can't begrudge her.
Well,
I knew what that person's life was like, and I knew how she was treated by the people that she was close to.
I was going to say that's serious pain that she's dealing with. Mm-hmm. If it turns into a revenge or vindictive state of mind, that's terrible.
Yeah,
that's some serious abuse in a very short amount of time, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm trying to think. I haven't really thought about that in a while, but I don't know if there was a way that she could have done that differently. Like, still made the same decision, but done it more equitably.
It's a tough subject. Man.
Done it without, like... And I guess there is... I don't think anyone alive knows how hard it is to be that sad. Like, I don't think you can know.
Like, you mean to actually go through with it?
Yeah. To be so sad. I mean, because I think like most normal functioning adults have thought about suicide or considered it or contemplated it, or it goes through their... Like, this is like a normal part of it. Like, and then you realize like you hit up against all like the speed bumps and you're like, oh man, like my mom, it really upset my mom. Like, which in this most recent situation I was just in, like, this person had this incredible relationship with his mom and his parents both. And so he must have known full well how hard it was going to be on them. It wasn't like he was mad at him.
I'll tell you this, from my perspective, it's hard to know. Even experiencing somebody committing suicide, it's hard to know what somebody else is going to feel. And I don't know that it comes into light for somebody that does an emotional decision like that. The logical decision puts you in a position to have the discussion with people and say, I'm gonna do this. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do this anymore, and I just want to say goodbye. And I want you to be able to say goodbye. And I want to, that's the logical discussion you have with people. The emotional decision is that you leave them out of any context of that. So is there concern for other people's loss and emotion in the end of that?
I guess when I like in that regard is that in this most recent situation, I think they knew it was going to be devastating to their family. Right. I think they were so sad that the sadness outweighed the guilt of knowing. Like, I mean, I would imagine they were just thinking in the end, like they'll get better.
Yeah.
Like there was like that realization, like I'm not gonna get better, and accepting that, and just thinking like you're just kind of propping yourself up at the end of the day, and be like like it's gonna be a hard year or two for them, and they'll be okay. Yeah. Like they'll move on. They'll have like in that moment of like tremendous sadness, I could imagine like my friend just thinking like, well, my brother will get married and like they'll have kids, and and then my parents will be grandparents, and then they'll just like keep marching on, and like it's gonna suck for them now, or it's gonna suck for them for like a year or two, but it'll be okay in the end. Well, and I think that their sadness was so deep, like just so all encompassing that they could figure that out. And I still don't, and I don't think that, like, I'm not mad about it. Like, but I'm also like kind of removed. Like, I mean, he was a friend of mine. But not like, wasn't someone I've known my whole life.
Well, no, but he was a young man, 25 years old, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 25.
Had a relationship with his parents, but extremely sad. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
that's...
It was wild. It was wild meeting his family and seeing how close they were.
Well, and you were part of that, and and something that was sacred in that whole thing. I mean, that was a sacred journey for them.
Yeah.
To climb those 14ers and spread the ashes, and then to have the emotional deficit or breakdown. Yeah, and
like part of me, like I really thought like maybe they weren't that close. And like, spending a day with them, like, staying at their house and like whatever, like all we did for like 24 hours was tell stories. And they were just like interested in me because I was with him for 3 months that they weren't around. So like they had no real window into that like semester of his life. And so they were just like super interested in like the, like, oh, what was he like? Like, how did he interact with other students? Or like, what was he interested in? What was like, tell us funny stories, like anecdotal, anything. They were just like, they knew so much. Like they knew so many things.
Give us a little context on that. So you taught him?
Yeah. So I was an instructor. I worked for a kind of a academically rigorous study abroad program. So it was like the way the courses worked. I did it for like 5 or 6 years. The way the courses worked, I'd have 12 students, and there'd be 3 instructors. So 12 students, 3 instructors, 3 months, generally in kind of pretty off the beaten path, remote locations around the world. So he was a student of mine that was a semester program in Madagascar. And it was actually we started in Madagascar, and like 6 weeks into the semester, there was a outbreak of bubonic plague. Like Black Death. Awesome. Yeah, right. Of course. Why not? Like, Madagascar, they got a lot going for them. Right. They're still just like the rest of us are like we're like on to climate change.
There's a great cartoon about those.
Like we're like dealing with like modern shit, right? Like climate change, like giant, like whatever. Like Madagascar, they're still just like trying to get rid of the bubonic plague. It's like an episode of Monty Python. So we had to leave. Like, we had to flee Madagascar, like 6 weeks into a semester, because every like 45 minutes, someone had to go back to the hospital to get checked for the Black Death. So we left and we flew to Senegal, and we did the second half of the semester in Senegal. So I got to know.
Where's Senegal?
Senegal, West Africa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
I definitely don't know that geography.
Yeah, Senegal is, if you look at the continent of Africa, and if you find the very western point of the continent, that's Dakar. That's the capital of Senegal.
Okay.
So the very...
Dakar. I know
Dakar. Yeah. So like there's like a little tiny little bump, and that's the furthest west you can be on the continent of Africa, and that is the country of Senegal.
Wow. And where's Madagascar from?
Madagascar is a really big island that is about the size of California and looks a lot like, weirdly, if you just like looked at your left foot, that's exactly what Madagascar looks like. So just like take California, shape it like your left foot, and then put it off the southeast coast of the continent of Africa. Part of the African continent, like it's technically Africa, but it's geographically separated by the Mozambique Channel.
Okay.
So really big island.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we started in Madagascar, then went to Senegal. And I got to know him over those 3 months. And it was interesting because his family was, obviously not there for that. And so like I think it was weird to me to see like how much they knew about his life, and like weird stories. Like, this person sent me an email, I think it was 2022. He was 24 years old. He was living in Washington, D.C., working for the Federal Trade Commission. And sends me this email, and he was just like, hey man, like I need some advice here. Kind of got myself into a bit of a situation. He's like, went on this Tinder date last night. Like it was pretty cool. Like she was really nice. We hooked up, whatever. Get a phone call from her this morning, and she's like super upset with me. And she's like, you like blah, blah, blah. He was like, long story short is, he left a condom on the floor of this person's apartment, and that person's cat ate the condom.
Oh, jeez.
And then fucking died.
Oh, my God. So it just gets worse.
Yeah, like,
good Lord. That's
like,
some toxic
yeah,
buzz right there.
Yeah, he's like, so like this
might have to edit
cat
that out,
eats it, like a used condom, and then spends like a day. He's like, the first email, he's like, I'm at the vet. I'm not really sure if this is my responsibility. Like, what? Like, am I to blame? Is this like a her situation? Is this like, he's like, I don't really know what to do. He's like, other than the fact that I'm at the vet. There's a cat dying that's choking to death on a used condom.
Probably ate pineapple.
Yeah, so it's like, it's a funny story. And he's like writing to me, and he was like, not really looking for advice, just like, I think just expressing the absurdity of everything. And so when we were hiking on Saturday, we were like telling all these stories and like, like all these things that I know, like, I don't know like what this person's relationship is with like his parents, like, or his brother or his cousin. It was like on the hike, it was like me, his brother, his cousin, and his mom. His dad stayed back, didn't go on the hike, but he like dropped us off and picked us up in the afternoon. And I like, at some point during that day, like we gotten separated a little. Like his mom was like 50 yards behind us, and I was just like,
I bet that was a struggle for her.
Dude, she's a trooper, man. Those Colorado people are fucking crazy.
Well, yeah. I mean, 14ers are no joke anyway. But
yeah, it was like our fourth one of the day.
Yeah, and
she's still just crushing it. But I said to his brother, I was like, hey man, I was like, I'm sure you know the story, but like, we're telling stories about him, and I was like, man, one of the funniest emails I've ever gotten was that. I was like, your brother wrote to me about that Tinder date with that ended up with a dead cat, and he like immediately was like, oh dude, for real, oh my god, I can't believe we told you. Then he looks back and he says to it, like his mom who's like 30 yards behind us, he was like, hey mom, like, it's like this kid had a relation. Like if I went on a Tinder date with somebody and I left a used condom on the floor and it killed that person's cat, I would not under any circumstances whatsoever tell my mother about it.
Or anybody.
Like, I might tell like my buddies, but I am not going to tell my mom. And like, It was so sad
That's
to me.
true.
Like, he was like, he had told his mom about this. Like, they were like that close. He was like, yeah, I went on this date last night with this girl, and like we hooked up, and then I left a condom on the floor, and her cat ate it and died.
Yeah, that is pretty
so like
close
their relationship was like super, super tight, but still.
Yeah,
like,
not a lot of judgment there from mom on that one. Probably even dad. I mean,
no, I don't. Yeah, it was just like.
So did you know he mentally was in this like state of mind? Did you pick up on that in the 3 months that you were with him? Because you're an easy guy to talk to. So
not in those 3 months. Looking back on our like relationship post course, like it's funny. His mom asked me this. His mom and dad actually sat me down and they were like, "Hey, did you feel like? Did you see any of these tendencies?"
Right,
and I was like, "Man, it was like also that was 6 years ago." So like, and I was like, you know what? Like, no, like
doesn't go away.
I was like, no, I didn't, not at all. Like, not on course. Like, not when we were there. Not when those places. I think he was generally like really, really happy. And I was like, but in the years following, like I definitely had some emails from him. Like we wrote pretty frequently, like just like little short paragraph emails and funny things. And like, obviously I was writing like letters of recommendation and like helping him get jobs and like, just like being like that kind of support system. He definitely like sent me a couple of like, after he died, I was like digging through our email exchanges and I found a couple of times he'd been like, he'd written to me to see if I'd seen the Anthony Bourdain documentary.
What's that?
Anthony Bourdain. It's called Roadrunner. It's you know Anthony Bourdain.
I've heard the name.
Chef. He was a famous chef, really, really wonderful, traveled around the world, kind of a disgruntled, angry man. Killed himself in 2021.
Oh, wow.
One of the most famous chefs in the world, making all of the money, traveling on the world. He had a couple shows, like we had a show called Parts Unknown. Yeah, hung himself in a hotel in France. A couple hours after finishing shooting for a TV show that he made.
What the hell?
Yeah, he just like, great documentary. Check it out. It's called Roadrunner.
Roadrunner.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Huh.
And
by Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah, it's a documentary about his life.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
It's really, really cool. And so Sam had written to me a couple times about that. And he was like, hey, I don't know if you've seen this, but like, if you haven't, you should watch it. Love to talk to you about it. And
okay, so there's hinting.
Looking back on that, I'm like, man, like he saw this person that he really respected and really looked up to, and like this brilliant human who also chose to kill himself because he was really unhappy.
That's insane. That blows me away.
And, and then at some point in there, he wrote me an email one time. He wrote me an email that said he had moved to DC. He had left Colorado. He was working he was an aide to the governor of Colorado. And then he left and he had a job at the FTC in DC. And he wrote to me and said something to the effect of like, it seems like it seems that the only job you can get in this country anymore is just slowly killing you. Is like slowly committing suicide. Like that's the kind of, and when I read that, I was just like, oh, this dude just like, he's just really smart. Like he's seeing through the bullshit.
Right.
And he gets what's happening and he gets this whole thing. And like, he's like, when I read it, when he sent it to me, I didn't think it was suicidal. I was just like, oh, this person has like pulled the curtain back.
Right.
And exactly. He's seeing Oz, he was like, it's all bullshit. And I'm part of this bullshit, but whatever. Because most of us, that's like,
that's how we function. We've just kind of melded into it.
Most people don't realize that it's bullshit. Most people think it's important.
Yeah.
And like if you're really smart, you realize that it's bullshit.
No.
But you just go along with it.
No.
And I didn't think he was. When I found out that he had killed himself, I was truly surprised. Really sad. Like, and I hadn't heard.
Even though you support.
No, I support his decision. I was sad that he was that sad. I don't think people kill themselves out of joy. I don't think people are like, man,
not generally.
like life's going freaking awesome.
Yeah.
I can't wait to kill myself. They're just like, I think he must have experienced months of horrendous, agonizing depression and decided that.
Man, to put yourself in that position to mine has been years. It's been years, but I'm tenacious in nature, so it's hard for me to wrap my head around a young man or young woman wanting to take their life just after a few months of suffering. So, I mean, do you think that's possible? I mean, is it that fragile? Is life really that fragile? Because I'm a fighter by nature, so I've been clawing at the cliff for 53 years. And then, I mean, not that I haven't tried to kill myself through alcohol, drugs, motorcycles, women. I mean, you name it. I've tried to, do it without actually doing it. But
I think there is a sort of, unpopular philosophy that just says like the only real, like altruistic act you can do is to kill yourself. Like that is like the only selfless act that you can perpetrate in life is to take your own. Like that's like a dark, pretty like foreboding dark philosophy.
Well, no,
but
it's an interesting take because everybody else, 99% would say it's a selfish act.
And I think
it's a selfish.
I think that you can, with a couple of, shuffle steps, you can reposition yourself to realize that it's the only selfless act.
Well,
because like
people would call you a coward, but
yeah, and that's bullshit because they're the ones that just like get up and fucking go through the day every day and are unhappy and miserable and like inflict misery on others while like using up a finite amount of resources.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're a coward. You didn't want to do this, but it's just like when you, from that perspective, you're just like, what are we doing? We're just like using people and things and resources. Well,
society
and stuff.
Reduces people.
Yeah, we just use it and like we just like float through and whatever. Like there is that sort of, there is an argument I think that makes sense that says that purports that suicide is altruistically good. It's like you're checking yourself out. You're taking like if you remove yourself from the scenario, you're no longer wasting resources. You're no longer hurting other people. Right. You're no longer taking from this system. Like you remove yourself from it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, or from the people that surround you.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, but I think they're all pretty much the same reasons, different scenarios. If that makes sense, like. A rich kid, they're sucking off their parents. They feel bad for it. They fuck a bunch of shit up. They take their life. Mm-hmm. Me, I'm sucking off society. I suck off my friends because I'm blind, I'm disabled, blah, blah, blah. There's
like half blind.
I'm only half blind, but I'm fully aware.
Yeah.
And it's like at some point you're like, well, I'm tired of being a leech on society. A leech and not being able to do for myself, provide for myself, to give myself purpose.
Yeah, I think that's to me a seemingly fair assessment of like, I don't think anybody really feels good about taking more than they're giving.
Right.
I mean, sociopaths, like crazy, like, like the worst people. The succubuses
of society.
Yeah, they'll get off on the fact that they can like take more than they put in. But I think for most adjusted humans, like if you feel like your existence is causing more damage and more hurt and more suffering and more sadness than it is creating joy and comfort and pleasure. Like,
Right.
it starts to weigh on you.
Oh,
If you're
that's terrible.
I mean, like, that's all we can really do, right? Is like weigh it out at the end of the day. Like, how much joy did I bring into the world versus how much suffering did I put into the world today? And I think if you get too far in that like deficit, if you just like, I'm bringing no joy, I'm alleviating no pain, I'm making no meaningful contribution while simultaneously contributing a tremendous amount of suffering and agony and sadness, like, all of a sudden, like, it seems like kind of like you're doing people a favor.
Wow.
And like, there's like a hard fucking, like, you got to be really comfortable with objectivity at that point to be like, does my life bring more joy into the world, or does it create more suffering?
Well,
and if you,
and that's when, if you start breaking it down into logic, number one, I think fewer people would commit suicide because they couldn't actually step back and say, my life is terrible. Like, I couldn't fight anymore. Like, I've done everything I could. For me, that's what I look at, because I'm 53 years old and I've failed miserably. So it's not like I haven't fucking tried. It's, I've just failed in every aspect of life.
do you really feel like across the board, no successes?
Not that I can think of right now. And I rack my brain over this. It's not that I don't, like, I could sit here and point my fingers and say, oh, my kids are doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really have a whole lot to do with that because I was divorced by the time they were 12
Mm-hmm.
and cut out of their life, and only a part-time dad because...
Part-Time Dad's a really good band name.
That's not a bad...
It's like a free...
That's not a bad...
Yeah. What's up, everybody? We're Part-Time Dads.
That's actually...
Thanks for coming out tonight.
Right.
Like, it's pretty solid.
Right. And that's...
Anyway, yeah. Sorry not to make little...
No.
I'm just like, hey,
there's got to be humor.
When you say a good band name, you call out a good band name.
That's right.
That's just like, that's the rules.
My buddy Alan would agree with that for sure, and Brian, he would definitely agree with that.
Fucking Part-Time Dads, like you, and then you all play the keyboard.
Yes.
It's just like, it's like 8 dudes in a band, and everyone just plays like the synthesizer.
As long as we all have mullets.
Yeah, there's no other music. It's just like, yeah, we're Part-Time Dads, and like, it's like, these are our kids' keyboards. We can just play.
You're an advocate of taking your own life.
I think I am.
But based on in what circumstance though? Is it just sadness?
No.
Do you think?
No, it's not just sadness. I think that you get to exercise control over your own life, like me and Tucker Carlson. Like, fucking, you get to, like, I'm a Republican, and I like, don't tell me what to do. Like, don't tread on me, like, kind of stuff. Like, all that stuff. Like, that's bullshit. But I do think it's your life, and you get to make decisions about it, and you don't get to be... I honestly don't think that other people can tell you how to live or not live your life. I think that suicide, like, when people like always want to equate the words, they always want to like put suicide and cowardice together. And I think often that's fair. Like, if you're like, man, like,
trying to kill yourself.
Like
I don't see cowardice in killing yourself. But
if you're just like, man, like, shit's really overwhelming, and like, my kids are annoying, and like, I got 4 kids and it's really expensive, and I don't want to deal with this, and I have to go to this job that I hate because I have to like support these kids that I don't really want because they suck and I don't like them. Right. My wife's, like, my partner's awful, and I hate my things. I hate my job. I hate my boss. And you're just like, suicide then is just like, oh, you're just like not capable of dealing with the decisions that you've made. Like, you are no longer interested in participating in the life that you created for yourself, and that's shitty, and you shouldn't do that. But I think that there is a way in which you can, like, as I said, like, tidy things up and be like, yeah, I fulfilled my requirements. I committed to, like, these 10 things, you know, like by decisions that I made, you're like, I paid my bills, I raised my children, I like figured out my relationships, and I did all of that in the way that it needed to be done. And now I don't want to do this. That's fine to me. Like, to me, I think if you're using suicide as an escape, then it's a selfish act. I think if suicide is the way in which you want to check out from existence, to check out from an existence that you didn't necessarily ask for.
Well, just maybe doing this. Life is fucking hard.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. And that's the thing. I mean, it's depending on how you grow up, it's terrible. Well, even, I was talking to a buddy today. He's wealthy, very wealthy. And admittedly, he has spoiled his oldest daughter in certain ways. Oh, shit, I don't know where I was going with this. Oh, well, okay, it's back. Train actually reversed on that one. And she's still frustrated with the life that she has. She's still frustrated with it's not enough allowance. It's not enough. The car isn't good enough. That she wants more. She wants just more. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't understand the value of putting hard work in. And they've tried to instill that in her. But, and you guys grew up with money, right? To a certain degree.
Yeah. No, we were never allowed to know that things were okay.
What do you mean by that?
When I was a kid, my parents did not have a tremendous amount of disposable income, but they had
so not a lot of wealth. Yeah.
But what they did have, which is probably even better than disposable income, is that they knew that. I mean, both of my parents came from wealthy families, and they were a situation of if something were to happen,
yeah,
and that's the way I've lived my entire life, which is really kind of, it has created a bit of a monster.
Well, let's touch on this. So it creates security. You can risk. Okay. So
yeah, I can. All I do is risk. I know that if I run out of money tomorrow, I'll just call my parents.
Right.
Because they are
100%
reliable.
Do you think there's a problem with that?
No, but I think there is a difference between we have a bunch of money, let's spend it, as opposed to the best thing that you could ever have in your life, I think, is knowing that if shit goes sideways, there's someone there to
exactly
bail you out.
That's right.
And my parents have always been that. I have called home from train stations in foreign countries and be like, I don't have any money. And they're like, okay, cool. We'll hook you up.
Yeah.
I've called my parents.
Isn't
that
hey, beautiful?
I lost my job and I need money. They're like, okay, cool. And I was like, hey, I want to go to grad school, but I don't want to pay for it. They're like, okay, here's some money. My parents grew up that same way. They were just that, not we didn't grow up it wasn't lavish or extravagant, but there was never a question of we were never going to no one was ever going to lose their house.
Right.
And my parents could have both lost their jobs. And my grandparents would have just been
we got you.
There's a couple years salary.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Man, that would be nice.
It's it's just that thing. Always that thing.
So do you think I think that's a positive. And I come from a very impoverished upbringing. So the reason I say that is because there's security in community.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about money. It's about the attitude of, if you're stuck, we're there for you. Fortunately, they had the money to bail you out of a certain situation. Doesn't cost a lot of money, especially when you're overseas.
Yeah.
They can send a couple $100 and you could be
right
in a great space.
You know, I had this really interesting conversation with my mom today, just down the street from here. This people that my mother had been renting this home to a woman for the last couple of years, who the first year or so she was doing great. And then I think she kind of relapsed into some pretty hardcore drug problems and hadn't paid rent in 4 months. So I think she was $5,000 behind in rent. And, she was asking me what I thought she should do about it. And I was like, well, I mean, at some point you have to kick this person out. And she's like, well, what do I do about the money? And I'm like, well, what are you really going to do about it? Like take them to small claims court or something. You're not going to get the money. Like, let's just go ahead and say you're not going to get it.
Right.
You're not getting it.
Right. Exactly.
And if you do have to get it, if you actually try to pursue this, it's going to cost you just as much money.
Well,
and time and effort and whatever to get the money back out of it. So let's just say,
and then you're just beating somebody down that's already down.
They're already way down, like at the bottom.
They're at the
I'm
bottom.
like, so just let it go. And I felt, I felt bad. I didn't feel bad. I didn't even say this, but she had said, this would have been way different if it happened 25 years ago. She's like, because now, she's like, now if someone doesn't pay me $5,000, it doesn't matter. She's like, it's just like not that. She's like, it's fine. It doesn't matter to me.
Right.
Financially, she's like, emotionally it matters. She's like, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, but financially, $5,000 isn't.
But she also recognizes the deficit in who this woman is, or this family is, and that's the drugs, and she feels bad because she sees what the world is and what is created and what people have become.
Well, she tried to couch this conversation in this way. She's like, well, when she's like, 25 years ago, if I didn't, she wouldn't have been able to miss 1 month of rent, or I would have had to, or the whole thing would have the game would have been up.
Right.
And she said that, and she was like, I didn't have she's like, 25 years ago, I couldn't just be like, oh, it's $5,000. Who cares? And I partially accept that. But the other thing is if that 25 years ago, and she knows this, she doesn't want to admit it. If 25 years ago, if somebody stiffed her on 3 months of rent, she would have been absolutely fine financially. She would have had to call her parents.
Right.
And been like,
I
need $5,000. And they would have said, sure, whatever. Here's $5,000. Who cares?
Pocket change.
Right. And she's in that position now. So she would have been fine. It would have hurt her pride.
Right.
She would have had to call her dad.
Yep.
And been like, hey, I messed up. I need money. And that would have made her feel bad. But she wouldn't have been. No one, the bank wasn't foreclosing. No one was coming to take things away. And that is a slight difference. And I think that is the one thing, that's how I grew up. And that's how, I recognize the fact that, I get to do a bunch of dumb shit in my life and, take stupid risks and gamble and stuff and, make some money and, go fuck off and, drive around and do whatever I want. Because if, things go sideways, just call my parents. And
that's a hard thing to
I don't call them.
Fucking admit, man.
But I don't call them. I mean, I try to do this on my own, but I have a safety net, and that safety net, we've obviously definitely veered off course from suicide, but that safety net is what that is. The safety net, it is what allows relatively well-off white people to do whatever they want. Because we have you have generational information and generational wealth and generational experiences in which when my parents were in their 30s, they didn't have a lot of money, but my grandparents did.
Right.
And when my grandparents were in their 30s, they didn't have a lot of money, but guess who did?
Yeah.
Their parents.
Yeah.
And that sets up these generational experiences in which you don't have to worry about too much. Because I'm not wealthy now, but when my parents die, I will be.
So you think that, and we're going to jump off subject here just a little bit, but you think that that generational wealth has created, well, and I would actually, thinking about this now that you've said it, created, because I've had this conversation, this white privilege, that generational wealth that, Latino and Black communities don't have.
Yeah.
It's created that. Yeah, they don't have that safety net, do they? That's interesting.
No, and they don't.
That's
even,
an interesting
perspective. It's not even just the
perspective,
money. It's the knowledge.
Well,
it's the shit that
security.
like
It keeps going back to security.
White privilege is the idea that like you don't have to discover budgeting on your own.
Right.
Like it's just like you don't have to like as an adult be like, do you realize that there's like a way in which you can like look at the amount of money you have coming in and like the amount of money that needs to go out, and then you can allot money into different types of like places to go to these things? Like, no, you just like learn that as a child because like your parents had more money than they needed, so they're like, cool, like we're gonna pay the bills, and then we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna have like a slush fund for like home maintenance, and we're also gonna like plan for a vacation because like you just like learn like that's like white privilege is like not having to discover that.
Right.
It's like,
well, that's fair.
Yeah, white privilege is the idea that like you don't have to like, you know what, like when I went to college, when I went to undergrad, I didn't have to learn how to do that. Like it was like my parents went to college, and my grandparents went to college, and my great-grandparents went to college, and they knew all the things that you were supposed to do. They knew all the things you were supposed to fill out. Yeah. And they had all the forms. There was like a FAFSA. I didn't fill out any of that shit. Like someone else did it for me, and they were just like, "Here's your money. Go to this thing. Like get smarter or whatever."
So
but I didn't like learn that.
Do you feel spoiled?
At the time, no, it just like didn't.
But looking at that, like that.
Could you imagine being at 19 and like try to filling out a FAFSA? Like I don't even know what that means.
It's fucking terrible.
But I never did it.
See, I always had to figure shit out.
I didn't figure that shit out, man. Like I didn't do
and
any
I'm still
of it.
Dumb as shit.
because like my parents were just like, I don't know, like they didn't have to figure it out either because like their parents figured it out.
Yeah.
And like sooner or later, like before that, they were immigrants and they were just like happy to be here. So whatever.
Huh. All right, so let's close this off because we gotta get you to bed. But I want to know, and I think this is the most important thing. And this is the reason I stayed today. Is I want to know, we've kind of discussed your perspective and what you think of being a facilitator in your own life and the demise of that. Well, demise, taking of that. Demise is a terrible word. Like it's a negative word. Like just the facilitator in taking your own life and deciding when enough is enough. So my question is, spending time with the mom of a 25-year-old boy, with what seemingly looked like a bright future to them, you, society, even maybe. To him, it was a deficit. After experiencing the mom's reaction on the mountain, and maybe you can take us through that. How does that change your opinion? Does that push you in a different direction? How did that affect you?
Halfway through the day on Saturday, so this is still pretty fresh. Oh, is that rattling?
You're stroking the
yeah, it just seemed really fun. It was like
it is fun.
Yeah, man. It's like okay,
especially for guys like this texture.
I'm gonna tighten it back up. Okay, so I mean it's still pretty fresh. It was like Saturday, so it was 3 days. Yeah. 3 days out.
That's why I wanted to talk.
Halfway through the day, I realized that we weren't just going on a hike; that we were going on a hike too. Because I mean, his brother and his cousin and his mom were having kind of like conversations about like, they were like clearly discussing like where they wanted to like spread these ashes.
And halfway is about 2 peaks in.
Yeah, we're
214.
we're already like.
And how does that work? Because I don't think most people understand that you can do 14.
Okay.
414 is in a day.
414ers in a day. There's lots of places in Colorado. So like,
there's 29.
There's 56, 54, 56, 14,000 plus foot peaks in Colorado.
I thought it was 29.
No,
We're going to have to look those facts up. Is it really?
I think it's 54.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Our mountains are getting bigger. Go ahead.
They're getting bigger. And so there are lots of places where you can just like climb a single one, like a one-off. And there are lots of places like where I was at in, I don't even know where it was. Didn't pay attention.
So
near Breckenridge.
Yeah. You were.
Yeah. So
you were near the presidentials, were you?
No, we did Mount Democrat, Mount Lincoln.
So yeah, you were with the presidentials.
So obviously you're not like climbing from 0 to 14,000 feet. That's too far.
Right.
But But the trailhead from where we hiked from was around 11,000 feet, 10.5 or 11. And then you hike basically straight up to the first peak. So that's like, it was just 2 hours of, it's like walking.
It's terrible. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Absolutely stunning. But like you just like walk straight up, like, I mean, basically a staircase.
You're basically looking for a heart attack.
Yeah.
If you're not in shape.
So you hike up to 14, get to the top of the first one. And then you basically, what that elevation looked like was like 11,000 feet to 14,000 feet down to 12,000 across a ridge,
right?
Back up to the next peak, down the back of that peak, down to 11, back up to the next one. So like you're just going like 11, 14, 12, 14, 12, 14.
Yeah.
And then back down to 11.
So for those that don't really understand, they're like, oh, that's no big deal and that's easy, blah, blah. It's altitude at 10,000 feet. Even at 6,000 feet, which I think Denver is 6,000 feet. Which is
I think it's 5 or 6, 5 and
yeah, it's 6,000 or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing is like if you are from a place that is of low altitude, like the Midwest, and you go to a high altitude place, like if it's 10,000 feet or above, like,
well, even when you live out there, man.
Even if you do, like, if you try to go, like, I mean, so a couple days prior to this, I drove from 5,000 feet up to 11,500 feet, got out of the car, and tried to walk
20 feet, man.
Yeah, I mean, like
15
minutes. And the person I was with, both of us, like 15 minutes in, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Like you just can't. Like
there's
like the atmospheric pressure, I think, is so wildly different. Like it feels like there's no oxygen, but there is the same amount of oxygen. It's just like the pressure is completely different. Right. So you adjust to it after a while. But even if you are adjusted to 10,000 feet, 14 is still crazy.
Oh my gosh, dude.
So
it's hard to breathe.
Yeah. So like,
I've seen seasoned people buckle.
There are people at 14,000 feet, like with little oxygen tanks.
Yeah.
Like I saw them, like it was ridiculous. I was like, that's a bit much. Like, but they had like little like portable oxygen tanks.
Well, I think I would need it. I'm 53. I have lung issues and pneumonia, long-term pneumonia twice, and then brain surgery and collapsed lungs. So I'm going to take oxygen. Not an oxygen tank, just one of those things that squeezes oxygen in, because I've suffered, man. It sucks. But anyway.
Okay, so like halfway through that day, I realized that they were like talking about where they were going to like spread these ashes. And I was like, oh, this is like turning into a completely different thing that I didn't really know I was getting into. It made sense. I just hadn't thought through it.
Right.
I was like, oh, of course they're actually going to, like they.
Well, and this is your birthday also.
Yeah, but whatever. Birthdays are dumb. So.
But you generally like spending your dumb birthday alone.
I do, and I had to shift my own birthday alone time like to the day before.
Right.
So I can still like
do
my whole day by myself when no one talks to me, and I can just
reflect.
Think
you still haven't been able to do that, have you?
No, I did it. I did it the day before.
Okay.
Yeah, I spent the day before by myself, like suffering on a bike in the mountains.
Perfect.
And so like by the time we got to the last peak of the day, it was apparent that like they were gonna, and I tried to tried to read the room. I'm just like, hey, like I've definitely like picked up on what's going on here, and if you guys need some time, like I can hang out over here. Like, I'm fine with this. Like, I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to meet you people. Like, really happy. Like, I'd heard stories about his family.
So you never met these?
Never met any of these people.
Oh my gosh, dude!
This is like our first day.
Like,
yeah, first day.
Oh my shit! Fuck me, man.
So I met them. I had met them. This was on Saturday. I met them Friday at 5 p.m. when I got to their house in Breckenridge.
Oh my god!
Spent the night at their house. Got up the next morning at 5 a.m. and set off to like fucking Colorado people. Like
how the hell did
I got a hold of them. I was like, hey, you guys. I was like, hey, like I couldn't make it to the memorial. I'm really sorry. I was like, I'd love to meet.
So you initiated this?
Yeah, I just reached out. And I was like, I'm going to be in Boulder because they live in Boulder, but they have a place in the mountains. And I was like, I'll be in Boulder. Like, I'd love to meet if you guys like want to get a cup of coffee.
So they knew about you. Obviously,
the boy had they knew about. Yeah. And I had only found out that my friend had died because his mom got a hold of me. Like, she found my information and his stuff.
Holy shit!
And so I was like, hey, like, if you guys want to get a cup of coffee or lunch, like, I just like love to meet you and like offer my condolences in person. Like, I really like thought the world of your son. Like, he was a really amazing person. And they're like, so I like led with like, hey, like, let's go for coffee. They were like, no, let's just like climb 4 14,000 foot peaks in a day. Like, I was like, all right, like, I can do that. Like, I mean, it wasn't my first choice, but like, whatever.
Well, no, definitely not.
That's a lot of walking.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I would love to do that just on in and of itself. I would
Looking back on it, I'm like, man, it was really fun. I was like, yeah, I did 4:14.
But
it was super cool. So like, we get up there, and I mean, this is still pretty fresh, and it was pretty hard. So they decide like on a location, and like it's 4 of us, and my friend's brother has like a little jar with ashes in it, and like takes him. I mean, which is like a big thing, man. Like, he just opens this thing up, and he's just kind of slowly walking in a little circle, and he's just like sprinkling these ashes out. And then we're on top of a mountain peak, which is like 14,400 feet or something, and like there's a pretty stiff wind, and so it's just like taking these ashes and just whipping them across the top of this mountain peak. And it seems kind of cathartic for him. And at the same time, you could see that like up until that moment, his ashes as a representation of his person was like together. It was in a jar, in a backpack, in a place that was like feasible. It was there. It was like, it was just like, here he is. This is what was left, and this is where it's sitting. And if I want to be close to this, to the essence of this person's being, they are right here. And in that moment, like, they were just gone, like just whisked, like off the top of a mountain by the wind. And his mom just collapsed onto the ground. She's just weeping. I mean, like, everyone's crying. God. Like, we're all crying, but she is like.
So you did have emotion over this?
Oh, me, yeah. Dude, it was horrible. I wasn't emotional over what he did. I was just emotional over
of
the
repercussions.
Yeah. And his mom was just like, she had to do this thing. She reminded me of, like, in my mind now, like, there's this really, I can't remember the name of the photo. This really famous painting of a woman on the Midwestern prairies. She's about like 300 yards away from a farmhouse. It's like sitting up a little bit higher on the hill, and she's like collapsed on the ground, and she's like kind of clawing her way toward it. It's called. But that's kind of like, his mom reminded me of that person. She was just like holding on to these like ragged shards of granite on top of a mountain peak. And she was just saying, like, over and over again, like, she's like, I don't want to leave. She's like, I don't want to leave here. Because, like, this is, like, now, like this is where her son exists.
Right.
Like, and he doesn't even exist there anymore because it's gone. Like, it was, like,
but that's the last place.
But it was, like, the last place. She was like, this is where, she's like, I don't want to leave. She's like, I can't leave. Like she just wanted to stay up there, and I'm like, I was like, well, that's not feasible. I was like, it's gonna be very cold. Like,
yeah, I mean,
you know,
try
it's
to
like,
rationalize
yeah, you can't like
with irrational.
and I'm like, okay, like so, like this, like
it's a rational thought, actually.
Yeah.
The what she felt was rational. It's just the irrationality of that is you can't stay on the top of a mountain.
Yeah, you just can't. And,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, I totally like got that feeling from her, and it was just like, okay, like that's brutal, like, and like experiencing that a few days ago, like my takeaway is I wonder if it seems to me that if my friend,
All right.
I guess what I was like, I don't know if my friend could have foreseen that moment of his mom just like
It's hard.
clinging to the top of a mountain like a woman in an Andrew Wyeth painting. Like, if he knew that was going to be her experience, would he have made the same decision?
Well, okay.
And that's my takeaway. It's like,
well,
so it's only been 4 days, but I'm like, man,
let's talk about that.
I don't think anybody would do that to their mother.
Let's talk about that.
Who they had a relationship with. Like, even if you hate your mom, fine, whatever. But like,
right. So
clearly wasn't their case.
Let's talk about this for a second, and then we'll just close this out because you need to get to bed. And
yeah, I got a big day tomorrow.
You got a big day. I got a big day. and your girlfriend wants some alone time. So
she's getting a lot of alone time right now.
Well, with you, I mean,
oh, that's not alone time.
That's double time.
She's got all the alone time she needs.
All right.
Alone.
So you don't think that you don't think he would have done this if he would have foresaw what his mom felt?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not saying that. I said I'm wondering if.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Would he have made the same decision?
Well,
if he could have seen the absolute tragedy of his mother on top of a mountain, like breaking down, would he have made the same decision? Maybe. Like, maybe. But like,
maybe not if he
maybe
loved
not.
Her.
And that's like,
and there's a separation in that. Like, if you love someone, it's like you can justify, and then you talked about that a little bit earlier. Is you can justify the means to the end. This is just where it's led me.
Yeah.
But even in my own journey, I look at this and I'm like, in 2 months, you won't think about it. Once in a while, once a year, 2 times a year, someone is gonna think about me and feel sad for a moment. They'll have a moment. And that's the justification. Because I felt that, and I know that feeling, so it's easy to justify. That's not necessarily true with people that, well, I'm almost fucking this up. I'm almost talking myself out of this, and it's not gonna fucking happen. Especially blood family. Like, and we talked about this, like, what's too young? When is too young? When is enough? How much have you experienced to say this is all I can do?
I think that question comes up more often than not when you look at like I mean, this is a bit of a stretch, but there's a system in place in the Western world in which to literally, I mean, I think actually like literally turn the elderly and dying into a sort of just like GoFundMe campaign for the infinitely wealthy.
Right.
Like, you're like, oh, cool, you're like 80 and senile and like on like 45 medications. We can absolutely keep you alive for like a decade.
A decade, for
like,
sure.
I think my just like, you know,
and they'll take
there's nothing more
everything
boring than like personal anecdotes, but like my grandma, like her last 6 years were miserable. She hated every fucking second of it.
Yeah.
And
My
it
dad's
was
the same.
And it cost $130,000 a year to do that.
It's fucking
like
ridiculous.
in the rest of the world, which is like places where I've lived for a significant amount of my life. Like when you're 80 and senile and your like body no longer functions, like you just die. And it's totally fine.
Yeah,
like you just like die and it's okay. And you're not spending a decade
100%.
like as a vegetable.
Right.
Like the most expensive vegetable
like your quality
ever
of
made.
life is gone.
Yeah, and that sucks. Like, and so I think somewhere in that too, like completely aside from like sadness and frustration and like, you know, like seemingly like feeling like you're a failure or whatever, which I, you know, almost never agree with. But like, if you're just like, cool, like I am not like, there's no benefit to me being here other than like, like the military industrial complex and the forward / like the hospice industrial complex is like getting my money.
Right.
When like that money,
Exactly.
like you could just like take all that money and like instead of giving it to like Pfizer, just like give it to a hobo.
Right.
Like just like take like your last $5,000 and give it to like a home bum and just be like, buy all the meth you want and like go yard. Like it's way better than just like giving more money to some asshole in Connecticut.
I mean, you could buy them food for a year at $5,000.
Or like, yeah,
or you could buy
whatever.
them
Just be like,
counseling
cool,
or
like,
you know, something like that.
I know people in Connecticut that have that much money. Like they just get it from like insurance and shit. But like they don't care. They don't do anything fun with it. Like give it to a homeless person. See what they do.
No.
Like see what kind of like dumb thing they would buy. Like a Florida guy winning the lottery. It's just gonna be a really big airboat.
Oh,
like
man.
the biggest airboat
Huge. It's gonna be 4 air fans.
Yeah. Airboat.
2 on the front, 4 on the back. Baby.
Airboat 1.
Right.
Just cruise around the Everglades, just smashing shit. Yeah, like that's better. Like so, like that's a whole. We didn't even talk about that, but like just kill yourself because like it doesn't like you're not contributing anymore.
So
People are just taking your shit, like stuff that you could give to somebody else, things that you could leave behind. You could like donate it to like NPR or something.
right.
But no, like freaking Eli Lilly's gonna take it from you.
100%.
Yeah, that sucks. It's stupid.
They want it all. Like my dad was like, take me out in the woods.
Yeah.
Put one in the back.
That's what everyone says. Everybody says like, hey, if I ever get as bad as your grandma, make sure you pull the plug. But no one ever does, right? Like,
well, you can't.
We're too
legally.
like we're too.
You go to
soft.
fucking prison for 25 years for killing your
Killing
old
your
senile dad because he wants you to. It's like,
But like this
put a
thing, like
22 in there, let it swim
we're a little
around.
soft now. We're like, well, like you know, my mom watched my grandma suffer through like 6 years in a nursing home while saying like, if I ever get this way, make sure that you don't do this to me. But I'm going to be in the same position and I'm going to do the same thing and watch my mom like be sick in a nursing home for 6 years and spend like $500,000 on it while telling like my nieces and nephews,
it's all
like,
business.
hey, make sure you never do that to me.
Yeah.
Like
Like, it lines up.
founding member of Part-Time Dads.
And founding member of what?
Part-Time Dads. Yeah, the best band ever.
Right. You know, I mean, I do believe in God. I do believe in Jesus. I do believe in the Holy Spirit. I mean, that's what I was raised with. So I'm going to stick with it. Like, I got nothing to lose in it. I don't know any better. So it's like, why not?
Fair.
I like it. And I need that fucker to talk to all the time. It's like,
yeah, it's long, you know, driving around the country by
he
yourself.
put
is
me
hard.
here. He's going to have to hear all my bullshit, man. And if he's in existence, like, all the shit I went
He's
through.
probably so tired of listening to your bullshit.
Oh my God, he's like,
so
I'm on
annoying.
mute
He's
right
like,
now. But anyway, so let's close this out because
well, this has been fun.
yeah, this has been awesome. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate.
No, I'm glad we got to sit down and talk. I mean, better than I mean, I would hope that now, like, since we talked for this hour, you could delete whatever happened last night, because I would never want to hear that again. I can't imagine what we did talk about, but
I don't even know.
Hopefully you didn't.
Did I record that?
I don't know, maybe.
I might have.
Okay.
But it's not bad.
All right.
So do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm going to go with Jacob Chestnut.
Why?
Because I once went on a fake mission trip to South Africa with some friends of mine. John Krakauer's fantastic book, Under the Banner of Heaven, had just come out. We'd all read it.
Under the Banner?
Under the Banner of Heaven.
I like his writing.
I
don't know that one, actually.
Oh, it's great.
So
It's about the Reformed Fundamentalist Mormon Church. The ones that are still like just like doing fucking, they're like still like in polygamy. Like they're
getting crazy.
They're wild. Like they just like murder everybody and like have like 40 wives. And they live mostly in like Mexico and Canada because like those ding dongs still let them get away with it. So we had me and 3 friends happened to be in South Africa, and we thought we would get name tags made, like little elder names, you know, like regular Mormons. Right. We had these outfits that were just like we all bought a brand new pair of denim jeans, and then like a Where's Waldo red and white striped hoodie, and then we got like name tags made, and we used our porn names.
No, you did not.
Yeah, we used our porn names. So it was. I'm Jacob Chestnut. That's my porn name. Or my Reformed Fundamentalist Mormon missionary name. And I traveled around South Africa for a while talking about the good news with Andrew Sunset, Gust Kingsbridge, and Manuel Covington. But I was of course Jacob Chestnut. So
perfect.
That's my alias. I'm going to go with. I'm going with Jacob Chestnut.
Well, thanks for being here, Jacob Chestnut.
Yeah,
this is the Drunken Monk. Maybe we'll change that name. Well, this is the Terminal Podcast.
It's a good name.
It is a great name.
Yeah,
I like it. Well, I have to do a little research, but yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you being here. And I appreciate you.
Also, don't kill yourself unless you really, really, really want to.
Right.
Think through it. Like you gotta weigh it out. Like there's like it's almost guaranteed to be the wrong choice.
Well,
it might be right, but it's probably not.
You know, well, that is always the question. So,
just saying, it's probably not the right choice. All right,
but we're still not sure. So,
no, but just saying.
That's the whole point of this thing. You know, but all right, man. Thanks a lot for being here. I love you. Take care. Good luck on your journeys.
Thank you. You too.
Yep. We out.